It was mind-blowing. You can see all these concentric rings. It's been likened to sort of God's thumbprint in some sort of corners of the internet. So there's lots and lots of things all have to be happening at once. It's sort of this high set of unlikely chances have to line up.
Wildlife experts say the world is losing animals at an alarming rate. The World Wildlife Fund looked at the data on more than 5,000 animal species between 1970 and 2018 and found populations, on average, dropped by 69%. Latin America saw some of the largest losses, including so much of the Amazon rainforest that the WWF now says it's nearly non-functional. Researchers say right now 1 million animal and plant species face extinction.
Hundreds of pilot whales have become stranded in New Zealand. Approximately 500 of them have beached themselves on the remote Chatham Islands off the coast of the South Island.
Well, Gab, it's happened over two separate events, last Friday and again this Monday that just passed. But essentially what's happened is that 500 pilot whales have become stranded on separate incidents. As I say, on the Friday and the Monday, around 230 on the Friday and then a further 245 on the Monday. Now, we know that pilot whales become beached or become stranded quite often. What we don't know is why. So a number of people are researching the incident. Just last month in Tasmania, around 230 pilot whales became stranded off Tasmania's west coast, and again 200 of those died. To the day 2 years ago on that same island in Tasmania, 470 pilot whales became stranded. So it's quite an issue.
And we've got an eye on Earth and an alarming update from the U.S. Drought Monitor. According to a new report, 55% of the country is experiencing drought conditions. The drought has been spreading since the beginning of September and now covers more of the nation than it has since April. More than 133 million people live in drought areas, which is the highest number since 2016. The Mississippi River is experiencing critically low water levels, so are many of its, like the Illinois, Ohio, and Missouri rivers.
Earth's wildlife populations are in crisis. The Living Planet report, tracking a selection of global vertebrate numbers, has recorded staggering losses and found that population sizes declined by 69% on average in just 50 years.
So much of being with us.
Thank you.
They are really sad scenes we're seeing, but it's all too familiar. A similar incident happened the day before. What's going on?
We don't know. We simply do not know. So whale strandings are a mystery because if we knew why and when they would happen, we'd try and prevent them, but we just don't. Yeah, and the fact that this stranding yesterday occurred the same day as a previous stranding 2 years ago involving the same species is interesting. But also the fact that there was 14 sperm whales in a similar location stranded a day before that. What's going on?
Some as cursed. The nation's residents had paused to remember the victims of two deadly tremors when hours later another one struck.
Dr. Jones, we mentioned this before, your reaction. September 19th is a day that's had two earthquakes, and an hour before this quake, they'd had a nationwide earthquake drill. That is such an odd coincidence.
It is an odd coincidence.
A ceremony had just been held to mark the anniversary of two other major quakes. 5 years ago, more than 350 people died, and in 1985, the devastation in Mexico was widespread.
And of course, on September 19th, 1985, an earthquake in Mexico killed 5,000.
Since 1985, it's happened now 3 times in this one day. It is just an unusual coincidence.
Lunchtime in Mexico and the earth is jolted. High above the ground, they had nowhere to go.
Oh my God, look at the other buildings. They're all swaying.
Religious mass wasn't spared as panic and confusion spread on the streets.
Oh my God, everything's really flying around.
From hotel rooms in Puerto Vallarta.
The 7.6 magnitude quake centered on the Pacific coast.
We've got some more breaking news overnight as well. A powerful 6.8 magnitude earthquake struck Mexico, killing at least 2 people.
This is the second quake in the area this week. A 7.6 magnitude earthquake shook the area on Monday.
But it could be felt hundreds of miles away in Mexico City. It all comes just 3 days after another deadly quake about 200 miles away on the Pacific coast.
Well, check this out. This is Devil's Hole at Death Valley. So on Monday, park rangers there were able to tell that there was an earthquake somewhere just by watching the water move in Devil's Hole. Now, this was a result of that 7.6 quake that shook in Mexico. This is how, like, water sloshes in your pool when there's an earthquake. So many of you remember that Devil's Hole is also home of the endangered pupfish.
A 7.8 deadly earthquake struck that same area just 3 days ago. That's always a reminder for us here in California.
We're along that fault line.
We sure are.
I was thinking about that because last week we had 3 earthquakes pretty much in a row. And I was thinking to myself, I'm not prepared at all. Like, if it happened in the middle of the night, do I put my mattress over me? So I started thinking and researching. That's a good reminder to all of us.
To California now, where a 4.4 magnitude earthquake rattled some nerves near Santa Rosa last night. Oh. Initial quake was followed by a strong aftershock just 1 minute later.
One resident said that her dogs were acting strangely about 10 seconds before the quake hit.
A hair-raising moment in Santa Rosa last night at 6:39 p.m. as a 4.4 earthquake hit.
Now to the North Bay, where neighbors in Santa Rosa have noticed a strange side effect from last week's earthquake, a surge in water flowing right through a popular creek.
Quake, obviously, we kind of get our bearings.
John McCauley and Suzanne Dickinson felt the shaking and soon after saw that Mark West Creek near their home looked different than it did before.
The creek went from looking like a pond, no discernible flow, to look like waves of flow, so it was increasing dramatically in this time span of minutes.
Right after the quake?
Right after the quake.
And that was the first thing for me. I looked out the window and I was like, wow, all the rocks are gone.
Obviously something shifted around to increase the flow dramatically. We looked at it and it looked like there was a wave of water coming down the stream. Wow. And it was as if you were at the seashore and you watch the wave break and the wave washes up on it, and each successive wave kind of washes up further and closer as the tide is coming in. That's what I would liken it to.
One KCRA viewer shared this video with us. Take a look. She had some damage at her home. Quite a few of her wine bottles came crashing down. At least one of them broke.
Yeah, and animals are very keen at sensing earthquakes. This cat was clearly shaken up. You could hear it. KPIX 5's Betty Yu is in downtown Santa Rosa, where the quake even disrupted some dinner plans.
Crazy. Everything was shaking. The chef ran out.
Customers felt 2 jolts.
An official one felt like everybody was scared. The second one, everybody ran out. It was pretty intense.
Taiwan's president has activated the island's Central Emergency Operations Center, responding to a 6.9 magnitude earthquake that hit the southeast corner of Taiwan earlier today.
Severe aftershocks continue to rock Taiwan in the wake of the 6.9 magnitude earthquake that struck southern regions of the island.
This quake was reported overnight. It was so strong that it toppled a 3-story building. Several people were rescued from beneath the rubble.
Nearly 150 others were injured. The quake derailed trains, causing buildings to collapse, and trapped hundreds on mountains and roads. Now, a tsunami warning was issued in the moments following the earthquake.
A badminton game pauses, then the world comes crashing down. Taiwan shaken. A 6.9 magnitude quake on Sunday afternoon crumbled this 7-Eleven store and apartment building. 4 people, including a child, were rescued here. Japan issued a tsunami warning, but the waves stayed down. In Taiwan, the tremor stranded tourists and shook trains. Some derailed. Riders were brought to a halt on this road. The mountain slipped, streets cracked, and some disappeared. 23 years ago, almost to the day, 2,400 people died. A different outcome this time.
And then here in Taipei, at my place, 200 miles away, the shaking was so intense and has been continuing that even in the aftershocks, you almost feel like you're on a boat when the building starts swaying back and forth. No serious damage, but I'll tell you what, I feel motion sick, and I have for much of the day, as have much of my friends here in Taipei who live on a higher floor. And so everybody just kind of hoping that the worst of these quakes are over.
And so we need to remember that context, that what you feel isn't just the magnitude. It's that intensity number that really tells you what to expect in terms of damage.
And so now is a good time sort of to remind our viewers that we are living in earthquake country. So if you wouldn't mind, again, sharing all of the advice that we need to hear.
Right.
Yeah.
We are at least in Southern California, we aren't going to get a tsunami. We don't have this type of subduction zone here, but we do have the San Andreas. We could easily have this large an earthquake.